What is up, YouTube? G3 Iron here, and we are today taking a look at our first 100 maps. This is our series on Let's Run Maps, where we run 100 maps, and we use different crafting techniques in order to test out different drop rates and different profitability setups. Testing out the investment level that you need to put into your maps in order to retain and incur and gather good profit margins back on different maps and different layouts. So today, one of the things that we're going to be doing is simply going over our profits and our returns on arcade, and then of course in the future we're going to be doing other maps. Thanks so much to everybody that voted on the straw poll. We are now working on our next set of 100 maps presently. So quickly running over our character, you can see that our character's setup for this particular build is a level 90 Deadeye. We're equipping almost as much as Magic Find as we possibly can, stacking increased item quantity rather than rarity. Quantity affects currency drops as well as divination card drops, so that's what we're going to be stacking here with this particular build. We're running two white-socketed pariahs, which gives us 15% increased quantity per white socket, so that's 30% right there on the two pariahs. Then we're also running Goldworm with 18% increased quantity. We're running Asadima's Touch with 10% increased quantity. We're running Abisco's Leash with 5% increased quantity. So that brings us up to 63% flat increased item quantity. Then for enemies that get frozen, the Wind Ripper gives us another 15% increased item quantity, which is great. Then on normal enemies that are frozen, we get another 50% increased quantity thanks to Bisco's Collar. And then we're using Divination Distillate to just go full out on the meme quant, which gives us another 12% increased quantity while the flask is in effect. So we've got to be spamming our skills and running low on mana in order for that effect to actually take place. It's not really reliable, especially when you're reserving as much mana as I am, but occasionally over 100 maps, it does help out every little bit that it can. So that's a little bit about the character. Moving on to what this looks like after 100 maps. This is the garbled mess that you can see. This was what one of my dump tabs looked like after 100 maps. This was the another stash tab, and this was the third. So it took about 2.5 or 2 1/3 stash tabs in order to do this using the filters that I was using. You can see as you're watching the videos just above that there's a lot of rare items that are dropping. That's because I didn't take off my chaos recipe loot filter. A lot of you are just going to cringe at that. That's totally fine. But I wanted to show off, and I like to show off, especially when we're running 100 maps. If you are low on currency, you can simply set up your filter to be a chaos recipe filter, and you will make currency that way because rares drop left, right, and center. So that should never be a problem. And if you are only picking up very strict things, which I did not pick up, as you look and see, I didn't pick up any rare items. I just picked up maps and currencies, and occasionally I picked up some jewels, but you'll see that it can be quite profitable even only picking up currency, maps, and jewels. So that's what everything looked like prior to sorting it. As we were running 100 arcade maps, this is what 100 arcade maps looks like. If you're not familiar with stacking or with the size of stash tabs, they stack in a form of 12, so you can simply count all the way across, all the way up to 96, and then simply add the last 4, and you've got 100 maps inside a stash tab. This is one of the best ways that I've been taught. Other streamers and other YouTube contributors and other players have taught me that this is one of the best ways to roll a whole bunch of maps. You throw all your maps into a tab, you alch every single map, and then you're going to search for the mods that you don't want to run that are potentially dangerous to your build, and then you're going to chaos reroll those, and then you simply go from there. This saves a whole bunch of time because it means that every single time you come out of a map, you don't have to be stopping and interacting with a map. You simply grab a map, grab a fragment in this scenario, and go. All right, so this is what the stash tabs looked like after we were done. These are the maps organized, the divination cards organized, the essences organized, as well as some of the superior gems that I grabbed, as well as the jewels, and occasionally some lore weave fodder with the unique rings. Did bump into a couple of breaches. That was always fun. Breaches are always great content. Bumped into one Abyssal Depths, which paid off with the Stygian Vise. And then other than that, a bunch of shaped maps dropped, which was really great. It was actually pretty cool to see how many relatively high tier tier maps dropped in relationship to Arcade. Arcade's only a tier 7, and so for the number of rare maps that we got back, I thought it was great. I thought the number of maps that we got back was definitely worth it. This was the pure currency. This is what it looked like all organized and stacked up. And so let's get into some of the numbers. So what did we invest into our maps? We invested, first off, 141% completion. Those of you that are wondering why you can't sustain maps or why you're not getting as many maps to drop, it's simply because you don't have enough completion percentage on your atlas and you're not running enough maps. So get that completion percentage as close to 159 as you can and then go. So our expenses were alching on every map. And then we had roughly 15 temporal chains that were rolled. I didn't want to run any map that had temporal chains on it, so we got rid of them. We just chaos re-rolled. So that's another 15 chaos of investment that we put in. We rolled roughly 12 reflect maps, either reflecting physical or reflecting elemental damage. Both of those are a no-no for our build. So we spent about 100 C purchasing the maps in bulk using the PoE official trade website bulk feature, which was great. Bought 75 of them from one player and then 25 from another. Spent 100 alch, obviously, in order to alch up everything, and then spent 100 frags, which bought those again on the bulk site, some at 2 and some at 1 and then some at 1.5, so roughly 1.5 each. So the total invested is about 327 C. That's about the total investment. What were the results of all of that investment and effort put into 100 maps? Well, I've pulled all of this data thanks to Currency Cop. It is a wonderful third-party tool, as well as using Mapwatch. So we're going to take a look really quick at the currency, the clicks, and the returns, as well as the time that it took us to actually run these maps in order to make the currency that we made, or spend the currency that we spent. We'll find out here in just a moment. So for the Currency Cop data, some of it was inaccurate. I will simply say that when I booted Currency Cop to make these numbers, it said that Maelstrom of Chaos, a toll map, was worth 500 C. I don't know why it bugged that out, but that was just the price check that it grabbed. Maybe there's only one person at the moment that was selling the Maelstrom of Chaos, a toll map, but I fixed that price so that way it is not valued at 500 C. If you would like to buy my Maelstrom of Chaos, a toll map for 500 C, you can hit me up. You can find my account info to hit me up and send me a trade request down below. But no, seriously, that was absolutely ridiculous. It was really buggy that Currency Cop was giving us that feedback back. So in terms of the total number of clicks and the total number of drops, div cards. This is by far the coolest thing and the most fun thing about running maps is finding div cards, in my opinion. So the total number of clicks, we found 94 different div cards that we picked up, and then the total value of it was 353 chaos. So you can see if you've got that 327 number in your mind of all of the currency that we dumped into our maps, as well as alching, as well as fragmenting, as well as re-rolling from the mods that we didn't want to run, we've already made a profit here just from the div cards. Now, we found 9 Saints Treasures. That was relatively high because last league, when I ran this same test, actually over the course of 150 maps, I only found 5 Saints Treasures. So I am running with a little bit more increased item quantity this league, as well as another factor, which is that Arcade was only a tier 3 map last league, and this league it's a tier 7 map. So those two factors seem to be at play. It could just be that I got lucky on this particular run and found 9 cards. But that's a huge chunk of our profit right there. Found a bunch of Her Masks, which is great because with 41 Her Masks, that's what, 10 fragments that we're getting back just right away that we can dump into other maps. Found a bunch of the Gambler and a bunch of Assassin's Favor. The rest of these are pretty much one-ofs. Moving on to our maps and what we pulled, we picked up a grand total of 153 maps, and the map value totaled out to be about 125. So that's less than a chaos per map picked up, but I imagine that some of that ratio is because we were picking up white maps included. This was every single map that was popping up on a pretty standard filter, on a pretty basic level filter. But again, this basically means that we've got another 153 different zones that we can run in, and you can look and see, I mean, there are several of these maps that were pulled up that are going to be rare maps and similar in terms of their tier to Arcade. So if you're looking at just running tier 6, tier 7, tier 8, tier 9 maps, you're getting a pretty good level of investment back. I was very surprised at the number of maps that we got back. You can see there several maps that are relatively low valued, but also a bunch of maps that are pretty decent value for the tier of content that we are running. So I was impressed by that. I enjoyed that. But of course, that's all thanks to our completion percentage. So again, those of you that can't sustain your maps, get that completion percentage up. Get carries to complete maps for you in red maps. If you can't do it, build other character types, maybe bossing types that could do it. That's one of the things that I've done this league, is to give myself a bossing character as well as my magic find character, so that way no matter what happens on a particularly poor rolled vol corrupted map, I can go in and take out the boss as needs be myself, or hire a guildie, or hire somebody else on the market to come in and do it for me. Those are always great things to do, and it's worth the investment, because every 1% that you're bumping up on your atlas is going to pay off for every other map that you are running the rest of the league. Okay, I did pick up essences because I started playing the game during Essence League. Well, really dedicated myself to the game during Essence League, and I love Essence League. So essences aren't nearly as cool as they used to be, because we've got all of these wonderful targetable crafting methods now with Bestiary and with Delve, but nonetheless, it's still a cool thing. It's a little bit nostalgic for me. So, had 57 clicks to pick up things, had only 8 chaos worth of splinters. So the splinters that we got, you can see here, we got 8 tall, 7 esh, 5 zoff. I think we only had 3 breaches, but as I said earlier, breach content is always fun. So whenever I saw a breach, I was doing it. Did not, of course, see a Chayla breach at all. Had a remnant of corruption. For those of you that are wondering why there are no C's on these words, it's because I simply sort out the C's, because Currency Cop brings C's over when it's bringing values, so that messes with the Excel sheet. So I just remove C's from a lot of things in the document by mass removing it. Anyway, so Splinter value was 8 chaos. Essence value was 25 chaos. So again, not really worth it in terms of the clicks. It's not even 1 chaos per to pick up. And the vast majority of this value, of this 26 chaos value, is off the remnant of corruptions. So for the most part, essences are pretty much worthless nowadays. Vessel value, found a couple of vessels that was worth 2.66 chaos. All right, in terms of currency, our total clicks for currency, this is going to be slightly skewed, because this assumes that each jeweler's orb was obtained individually rather than through the 6-socket recipe. I was, of course, picking up the 6-socket recipe, and so that was a factor for a lot of these clicks. So take that with a grain of salt, just the total number of clicks per currency that we picked up. But nonetheless, it's a fun stat to run. So when we've got all of this tallied up and totaled together, you can see we did not find a pure exalted. And the most valuable stuff that we found was simply pure chaos. We found 30 of that. We found 2 divine orbs. We found an orb of annulment. We also had some blessed orbs, which I know those don't hold value anymore. We found a bunch of silver coins, some sextants, some glass blower bulbers, as well as some scour rings, regrets, and regals that are actually worth a little bit of chaos here and there. So the total clicks, when you combine it all together, is just over 1,300 clicks, with the total value being 800, just under 820 C. So when you remember back to our number of what we used when we started for the calculations of what the level of investment was that was required, it was 327 chaos. So we made just under 500 chaos total. That's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that in terms of running 100 maps and getting a return back. It's basically saying if you're making profit of 500 chaos over 100 maps, it's basically saying each map is going to profit you 5 chaos on average. The value per click is just over half a chaos per click, but again, that's taking in to account Jeweler's Orbs, which when you take Jeweler's Orbs out, if you just subtract 500 from this, so, let's make this number 800, it changes our value per click to right around 1 chaos per. So that's just taking everything with a grain of salt, because the vast majority of the time I'm not picking up individual Jeweler's Orbs, and neither are you. We're mostly picking up 6 sockets. Okay, the Mapwatch data. So how long did it take us to do this? How long will it take you to actually run? For our build, all of this data is pulled off of Mapwatch. It is a wonderful, wonderful website that pulls all of the data from a text file that every single person's client generates. This is not a bannable offense. This is great. It doesn't actually interact with the client in any sort of shape or way. It's simply reading a client file, which you or I could do, and then spitting out the numbers for how long it takes you to run a map. So you can see on average here, our average map time was 3 minutes and 3 minutes and 45 seconds, and our average number of portals was 1.21 portals per map. I have vastly improved this league in running 100 arcades, and the number of deaths that I had, I want to say I might have died 15 times at most, whereas last league when I was running this 10 levels earlier at level 80, even though it was only a tier 3, I think I died on average twice a map. So that was a massive difference in terms of the quality of life of running these maps, and it also increased the speed by quite a bit. So that's most of everything I want to get to, but one final thing that I wanted to show off was, and this is a new feature that we are going to be doing during these Let's Run 100 Maps series, is showing off a quick outlay or a mind concept map of a layout. When you are running a layout of a map for 100 times, developing a general sense for what that layout looks like is really helpful as you are going through the map. So, in general, it doesn't matter which side of the map you're starting on, if you're running from left to right or right to left, but in general, in arcade, it is a massive loop with most of the barriers in general are on the inside of the map. So, what I try to do as I am running a arcade map, as I did my 100 arcade maps here, is find the start point, and there's usually pretty early on a dividing line or a dividing section that you're going to choose whether or not you're going to go right or whether or not you're going to go left. Simply choose a direction. There's usually barriers in the middle. Sometimes there's monsters in the barriers, but simply choose a way and then maintain that pattern as you go throughout the map, whether that's going right or going left, but stay to that side of the wall. You'll hear the phrase a lot of the time, hug the wall, as you are mapping. That's because it is a wonderful way to catch all of these inlets where there are monsters, there are shrines, there are strong boxes, there are breaches, there are abysses. It's a wonderful spot for you to be able to find extra monsters that otherwise will hide from you if you simply take a center path approach. All of these maps, all 100 of these maps we did until there was sub 50 monsters on them. As you are going through, whether you're picking right or left, the beautiful thing about doing this, particularly on arcade, is that the boss is on one side of the map, which means whether you pick right or left, it doesn't matter. But when you get to the boss, you're simply going to loop and then continue following the wall in the opposite direction back to your starting point. It's great. A lot of the time I don't even open up a second portal because I'll leave some of the monsters that are there near the starting portal, whether I choose right or left. I'll leave some of the monsters there so that way I can keep up my Rampage stacks as I'm running all the way around the map. Some of the videos that you can see above, I actually counted some of the Rampage stacks for a general estimate of the mob count. My general estimate off of 10 different maps that I did this on was in between 650 mobs all the way up to 800. That was about the ratio, somewhere in between there, 650 to about 800, keeping my Rampage stacks at full stacks as I was running throughout the map using the particular level of investment that we were in. Obviously, the more investment you put into your map, it's going to increase the pack size, and everything's going to change from there on out. But that's about the pack size that we were running as we were running this set of 100 maps. So leave us a comment down below. I'm sure I've made mistakes today, or there are errors, or maybe you've got feedback for what maps you'd like us to do next. We've already got our straw poll feedback up. So again, thanks to everybody for contributing to that, whether you're a Patreon supporter and you supported through Patreon and voted there, whether you are a Discord member, a guildie, and you voted there, whether or not you're a YouTube community member and you voted there. Thanks so much for voting, and you'll see more of those straw polls coming out in the upcoming weeks as we are looking to farm 100 maps, and we're asking for you to help us do that. So as always, thanks for watching, YouTube, and I hope today is the day that a Mirror of Calandra drops for you.